we're not being informed enough about what our law degree can do. And sometimes these universities, which are, institutions of higher learning where you're supposed to be enlightened and empowered, unfortunately also fall prey to, capitalism. So sometimes you feel like a client of the university because they're just trying to get you in there, get your certificate, push you out. It's like a factory.
Hey, welcome to the show. My name is Mr. Fingers. If it is your first time tuning in, hey, I just want to welcome you and thank you for tuning in. And don't forget to click on that subscribe button. But today we have an amazing guest. I'm super excited to have her in the show. Let me quickly introduce her. She has a very fascinating journey which combines law and technology, making her an expert in her field. She started her education with a law degree from the University of Pretoria. She studied actually Afrikan, Feminist and Gender Studies at the Thabo Mbeki Afrikan Leadership Institute, showing her commitment to understanding important social issues. After her studies, Chanel completed her legal training and worked in Johannesburg, where she learned about contract law and property law. This experience gave her a strong foundation in the legal world. She then moved on to the role of data privacy consultant, where she advised on legal and compliance matters across various industries from the IT sector to the manufacturing sector. This role has really helped her become an expert in the data privacy sector. Today, Chanel works as a risk and compliance officer for a huge tech company. She uses her legal knowledge to help companies manage risks and also stay compliant with regulations. And ladies and gentlemen, cyber heroes and cyber men and girls, I want you to give yourself a round of applause for this amazing person. We have Chanel. Welcome, Chanel.
Wow, thank you. Can you please wake me up every morning with that? Thank you.
Yeah, I really try to rewrite the intros every single time. People send me their bio. I'm like, let me try to make it special so you can feel special when you're coming into the show, because everybody is a cyber hero coming into the show,
No, mission accomplished.
Thank you so much. It's actually great having you to the show, and I've been wanting to have you here for a while. It's just that I think I've been delaying asking you to come to the show, because I feel like your journey can inspire a lot of people from where you started to where you are now, so that can really inspire a lot of people in terms of, maybe they want to jump into what you're currently doing right now. And I know there are people who want to do what you're doing, because there's so many career fields that people don't know about, and people only know about certain career fields, which they usually see maybe somebody doing it who live in their hood or on TV, because, it's on TVR, what I mean? But let's talk more about your journey. Like, what pursued you to obviously getting into law and studying law?
So, well, thank you for that. And I fully agree. I think that, we need these platforms. We need to hear and see the sort of behind the scenes of what happens. So with me, it was more of a trial and error, I would say, but also I think just playing into my strength. So growing up, I was that kid in drama and debating and all of those sort of cultural things. Is what I gravitated towards. So when it came time to, think about tertiary education, I was definitely like, not the numbers. I was not the sciences and the maths and the accountings. I knew that wasn't for me. And at the same time, as people of color, there's this pressure at home. You don't even know how to begin explaining what a BA in languages is, So law kind of fit in the middle. As the best option, I would say, for me to go. Having enjoyed that history, the English, the debating and all of that, it was just a natural fit.
Oh, nice. And then currently right now, what are you currently doing in terms of your role? Take us through that. What is your title right now in terms of what is your role and what are you currently doing on a day-to-day?
So currently I am a risk and compliance officer for a tech company. So the tech company is international, and they've recently opened their branch within South Africa. So although, I do have the legal experience, I'm coming in more in risk compliance advisory. So what I'm responsible for, and what I've done so far is risk assessments, for example, with a specific focus though on information security. So looking at all of the different departments and the operations, and looking at their procedures and identifying what the risks are. From a bit more of a legal perspective, I've also been involved in contractual audits, because as you can imagine, we have clients that we need to cater for. Contracts have been signed. So I would then have to audit those contracts and extract what the compliances are and ensure that those are being met within the different operations, specifically with a focus on information security, but just general compliance as well, just with your general operations. What we've also done a lot of this year, or what we are undertaking, is a lot of our recertifications. So ISO, SOC 2, as well as PCI. So I've been helping to oversee and facilitate that. So that takes like an audit process where you have to now gather evidences, present it to an auditor, and so it's a bit of a back and forth in that regard. But then other than that, just to generally support and sort of implement whatever the organization is required to comply with. So that then would look at your GDPR and your POPI. We are pretty much undertaking our POPI implementation. Project POPI is underway with us. Like I mentioned, because the company is international, they do have a GDPR framework. So with that, it's just more of supporting what's already there. But yeah, we are doing the regulatory compliance as well.
So you deal a lot with also, you come from a background where you've dealt with POPI Act and stuff like that. So take us through that. How did you get involved with that? Because, you were doing more traditional legal work. How you were able to get involved in the POPI Act and stuff like that? Because I know you were advising different companies before you started working for the tech company you're working for. But how did you get into that?
So I would say it was actually a bit of a blessing in disguise, So did the LLB, did the articles. So when I was doing my articles, I did about a year of conveyancing property law, and then the other year was contract and litigation. And when you get into litigation, that's when you must now decide whether you really like litigation or not, because litigation is your court work, and it's a lot of work. You're being billed per hour, you're spending hours and days in court. And that is your sort of traditional, what we think of lawyers. We think that this is what they do. They go to court, they speak in front of a judge. So for me, it became clear that I don't think litigation is something that I would want to pursue. Property law is really interesting, but I definitely enjoyed more of your contracts, more of your sort of advisory type of stuff. But obviously, like I said, having gone through the traditional route, did my admission, and then COVID hit. So we were all stuck at home. I was at home for about a year. It was pretty challenging, trying to look for work during that time. Also, obviously, the world was completely upside down. We didn't know what was happening. So yeah, then got word about this lady who was putting together a team of attorneys. And it was around about July 2021. July 2021 is when the POPI Act is something that was now compulsory for everybody to comply with. So there was a scramble. A lot of organizations were trying to get their POPI compliance. She took advantage of the moment, put together a team of attorneys who were then assisting quite a range of clients. So she already had, I would say, exposure to quite a range of clients based on her previous experience, took advantage of that, put a team of attorneys together. And yeah, that's where it started. Literally, I was employed on the 5th of July, 2021. As a data privacy consultant, like literally in the heart of when the POPI Act was, when we needed to comply with that. And then from there, really learning, with law, the nice thing is that you do get very foundational transferable skills. So, had that good foundation in terms of being able to interpret, being able to draft, understand policies. And then obviously you just have to now apply it specifically to data privacy in the POPI Act.
Yeah. Well, interesting. Your journey is very interesting. You've been through everything, eh? I mean, you had more challenges also on COVID. I'm looking at how COVID really affected a lot of people in the space, especially if you knew that you were not working remotely. And this showed the world that more people were jumping onto remote work as well. Besides COVID as well, what challenges have you had, obviously, on your journey to walking on your journey? But what challenges? Let me put it in this way: what was your biggest challenge besides COVID? Like into obviously trying to learn what you're learning, but also jumping into a different career title and a different career space as well.
Yeah. I just want to piggyback on that. I think you're completely right, where COVID really threw us in the deep end, in the working space, in any space. It affected literally every fiber of our lives. And I would say that was a slight challenge as well. So obviously, starting remote working and starting in a completely new industry by yourself, yes, you have that support online, but we were still learning how to cultivate and maintain online relationships. And then you're having to, start from scratch with the new client. And so that I would say was definitely a challenge. Another challenge specifically during that time, or I would say just within my data privacy journey, is the fact that the POPI Act is a very new thing. It's very new, and we don't actually know how to implement it, what to do with it. The POPI Act falls under the umbrella of data protection, and it's very much similar to the GDPR. But we obviously want to be able to make it applicable to us here in South Africa. So, you can speak to a lot of different data privacy advisors, data privacy attorneys, where, with the POPI Act in the beginning, especially the first 6 months to a year, there was a lot of different interpretations going around of what it means to be compliant within the specific way. And then you add into the mix the fact that the information regulator, who is the custodian of POPI, the government body that oversees POPI, they were very slow to come to the party. It makes sense. They obviously are also dealing with the new act. They are in this new position. So, you would look to them for direction, but they were very slow to come to the party. Only in the past, I would say 6 to 12 months, you actually see them really making more of a proactive, taking more proactive standpoint in terms of giving us direction and how things are supposed to be. Yeah, I would say also because the act is very principle based, is another challenge that we face, and it's a double-edged sword in that way. So essentially with POPI, there's 7 conditions that you need to comply with. They just tell you these are the 7 principles. You must protect the information, you must make it accessible, etc. These are the data subject rights. But because of the fact that this act must apply across industry, they can't be too prescriptive, because it needs to apply to a doctor's office, it needs to apply to a tech company, it needs to apply to a nail salon. So then you have to now interpret that for yourself, which I wouldn't say is a challenge, but it definitely is something that has to come with experience. And you have to just trust yourself and as you're, implementing and interpreting.
Interesting. What is a POPI Act for somebody sitting at home? Maybe because you give that some people are from the UK, some people are from the US, because I know there's different laws, obviously, for different countries. In the US, which they have HIPAA. In South Africa, we've got the POPI Act. What is the POPI Act? For those who don't know.
So essentially, the POPI Act is South Africa's data privacy framework. And the way that I like to look at it is that you have to look at the age that we're living in. Essentially, information is like currency now. Our information actually helps to protect us. It's part of our human rights now. So we would need then obviously to have laws that tell us, okay, how are you actually going to process that information? So similarly to if I use a simple example, it's a crime to assault somebody, right? Because affecting their autonomy, their bodily integrity. In the same way, you should not be unfairly processing somebody's information, because you would be now infringing on their rights to security, to access to information and those sort of things. So POPI helps to give us guidance and tell us this is how we should be processing and using each other's information, especially when you look at the context of, yes, on a human-to-human level, but as well when we are dealing with big companies. We know that big corporates obviously have a lot of funds, they have a lot of capital, they have a lot of pull. and sometimes would take advantage of consumers and your ordinary civilians. So Poppy also helps and gives them guidance to say that, hey, look, you can't just be taking information and doing with it what you want, the spam calling, the marketing, or those sort of things. That is where Poppy will come in and will guide us.
What advice would you give to somebody who's maybe doing law and they just finished studying law? Because I get a lot of DMs, and I do have people who have just finished law. I'll give you a great example. Recently, this past week, I was speaking to somebody that just recently finished graduating their law degree, and they want to jump into obviously doing risk and compliance. But what advice would you give to somebody who wants to jump into risk compliance in that way? What steps do you think, in your way, obviously, because I feel like there's no right or wrong answer to this, but what advice would you give to somebody in terms of what steps to actually take and what skills they would need to have?
Yeah. Well, I would say kudos to them because, when you're studying law, and I'm sure it's the same for a lot of your traditional professions, you think that, when you study it, you do your LLB, you're just going to be in court in front of a judge. And I remember in my final year, I did a subject called legal philosophy. So as much as I do enjoy the law and what legislation is supposed to be, that's what I did my feminist studies diploma and the legal philosophy, where you get a little bit more, into the philosophy behind things. And I remember that specific module was just targeted around how, we're not being informed enough about what our law degree can do. And sometimes these universities, which are, institutions of higher learning where you're supposed to be enlightened and empowered, unfortunately also fall prey to, capitalism. So sometimes you feel like a client of the university because they're just trying to get you in there, get your certificate, push you out. It's like a factory. So I would say kudos to that person. I only, really learned about that in my later years, that you don't just have to go to court and be an attorney. There are so many opportunities when you have the LLB degree. Like I say, it's got a lot of transferable skills. You really get great foundation in terms of being able to analyze, in terms of being able to write, in terms of being able to implement as well, having that critical thinking. So I think those would be definitely important skills that one should have. And then I would say just expose yourself. Expose yourself. And ask the questions of the people, like we mentioned in the beginning. Ask the questions of the people that you want to be in the places that you want to be. Start speaking to those people, and try to get as much information as you can. As much as we are definitely trying to protect our personal information, there's also so much information on the web. In terms of, how things can be done, learning about different acts, different courses and all of that. I would say definitely just empower yourself. And also lastly, understand that, we're all actually learning, especially in the risk and compliance, especially in the data privacy. We are all learning. That's where those transferable skills come in. Don't be afraid to fail or get it wrong. And I think the last thing I would just say is that, if you're able to, just maybe be a little bit more niche as well, as in when you can. So risk and compliance is very broad. Like I deal with it within the information security and legal tech space. But risk and compliance, I'm sure you would have an understanding from your side in terms of the technicalities within, cyber and Python and coding and all that stuff that we don't know. So just ensure that you have an understanding of, okay, what type of compliance? Do I want to go to legal compliance? Do I want to go into operational compliance? I think quality assurance also is considered compliance. So I would say just be clear about exactly what it is that you want, so that, when you are setting those goals, then you have a clear idea.
And then just to add on to what you're saying, I think what's very important is, educating yourself with certain materials as well, understanding the industry that you want to go into, as you mentioned as well, because the tech space is very big. If you want to go into a tech space, understand what space is it, what exactly are they dealing with. If, for example, it's the hospital, understand what is that they're doing. how does the law in that particular hospital, country, whatever it is as well that you're going to be going or working for. That's very important. If, for example, it's a space where they deal a lot with, for example, communication in terms of telecommunications, for example, you have to understand in terms of the law for that, what education, what type of education you would need. Also, obviously, a cert to add, maybe one certificate to be able to add on to your experience and to add on to obviously your degree as well that you've had. To that, I really like that as well. But I think one of the things I want to ask you as well is, how did you keep yourself updated in terms of learning more stuff? Do you have any, besides your degree, your law degree and everything, but do you have any certifications, or do you have any certifications or certificates that you have on your side or whatever? But how were you able to keep yourself updated with the latest, regulations, compliance, all these things?
Look, I think that's a really good question. And I think that I was very lucky with the organization that I was in before, because like I say, she was putting a team of attorneys together and everybody was learning the act all at once. So we actually, we had to do a sort of probationary period. And then at the end of 3 months, we literally had to do an oral exam where they were drilling you on the act. They were like section this, section that, and giving you problem scenarios. And then as well as now, when you're dealing with different sort of industries, like, for example, you mentioned there'll be, the hospitality industry or dealing with the medical industry. Now it's something that you've never dealt with before. And then that forces you to go and have to do the research, and be in a team, and be able to lean on people and ask them. So because the act was new, and at that place where I was employed, those were certain things that you had to do as part of your employment, your personal development, etc. But now in this new organization, and I think the unique thing is that I'm also the only risk and compliance officer. I have to be completely responsible for that on my own. So I've also, I guess now in a sense, been lucky in that I feel very comfortable with what I know in terms of the act. And I genuinely enjoy data privacy. So I am on LinkedIn. I follow the information regulators page. I follow them on Twitter, and I'm seeing what's on their newsletters and all of that. Obviously, because we need to be able to implement it, but also because I just enjoy some of the conversations. I mean, recently I joined one of their webinars where they were talking leading up to the elections, just talking about what role information plays. When we're dealing with the elections. So that was quite nice, but also because I'm learning, then it forces me to upskill myself. So previously I wasn't too sure, really. I'll be honest. I had not a very strong idea of what SOC 2 was until I went through the audit process, and now I have an understanding of what a SOC 2 certification is. So I guess my answer would be, if manage your own growth. So once you've set that goal, put markers in place to be like, okay, in 3 months, I need to complete this course or this reading, 6 months, etc. If that is not something that maybe works for you, or you're not doing that, then if you're putting yourself or challenging yourself if you're in new environments, it forces you to adapt, and, ultimately become upskilled. But yeah, for me, I definitely also just want to also go for my compliance certification. So that's something that I'm also having a look at as a way to just also upskill, but also certify myself. Because as you mentioned, the tech industry is very big. And sometimes you do need that piece of paper, to at least open the door or start having the conversation. So I guess that could be another piece of advice. Have a look and see in terms of compliance and auditing. Compliance and auditing kind of go hand in hand. So if there's any sort of compliance and auditing sort of certifications courses that you can do, definitely have a look at that, because essentially they both entail being able to look at like the skeleton of a thing and then figuring out what's happening and then seeing where the rules are being met.
100%, yeah. So which cert are you going for right now? Which institution?
So there's a compliance institute in South Africa. So you become like a certified compliance officer, essentially.
Oh,
that. So it's almost like how you'll get your CASA or your admission as an attorney or whatever it is. The Compliance Institute of South Africa will then certify you as a compliance officer. So
I didn't know that.
I also didn't. When I was looking for like compliance, GDPR sort of courses, they came up. And also at UCT, I've been seeing that, but that is not necessarily certified by that institute. They've just certified that themselves. But yeah, you can actually get a compliance certification from the institute.
Oh, nice. Interesting. Because there's also a compliance and a GCP as well, an IT audit from Qualys. I don't know if you know Qualys. Yeah, so Qualys as well has free certificates that you can get for compliance, for risk compliance, and yeah, for IT audits as well, which is very cool because the free Qualys is well recognized and a lot of companies they're using it. A lot of tech companies using it. So I mean, we're using Qualys as well in our company as well. I do also have a couple of Qualys certificates, which Qualys is very recognized. So if you want to get certs, I also do recommend Qualys as well. I also do recommend you, Chanel, as well. Go get yourself Qualys certificates.
I really will have a look, because we don't know where to look. We don't know where to look because things are new, things are up and coming. So I'll definitely have a look. And
then what advice would you give to your younger self, who are starting out and who are still searching for herself, finding her feet, knowing what you know today, with the skills, with the information that you have, with everything that you have, with the Chanel that loves music, who loves hiking, what advice would you give to your younger self, to your 18-year-old self who's like, boom, I'm done with high school, I'm about to jump into university. What advice would you give to your younger self?
Yeah, I think, I'm very lucky in that, although it's been kind of, I don't want to say like a blowing in the wind type of thing, but I feel like, all the things that have happened have led me here. And right now I'm in a place of gratitude, but it doesn't mean that along the journey there wasn't confusion and frustration. And it's a conversation I've been having with my niece recently as well. It's very simple. It's do what makes you happy. And it sounds like very simple advice, but the reason I say that is because right now she was faced with a situation where she made a decision and her parents weren't happy with it. And she felt so like guilty about having made the decision, but still went through with it anyway. But the decision for her was going to put her in a better place. And I remember saying to her, look, your parents don't know the hell that you were going through that made you make that decision to get out of there. So it's very easy for them to sit on the outside and be like, look, no, you shouldn't have made that decision or whatever it is. But they don't know what you were going through that led you to make that decision for yourself. So I would say really do what makes you happy. And yes, you will cause friction, but rather have that friction and then maybe repair that relationship with your parent or your advisor or whatever it is, as opposed to you holding yourself back, betraying yourself, and then actually ultimately having animosity against them because now who's responsible for that decision? It's them. So I would really say do what makes you happy, and whatever stage of life that you're in, lean into it because firstly, you're never going to be back there, but also take the most from it. So that you don't look back and be like, I wish I'd given that a little bit more effort or given that more attention or whatever it is. I really feel like every stage is there to teach you something. So really do what makes you happy, and wherever you are is just be in that place.
I love that. Do what makes you happy and just be grateful. I like that mindset. I think also with myself, if I were to give myself advice back then, is explore more. Get involved with people who which you see yourself being more like in the future, because that's very important. I feel like sometimes we get involved with people which we don't see ourselves looking like because we don't know that. But until you start seeing something different, getting exposed to different environments, different people who are more matured in terms of the mindset that you want to get. Your mind starts opening up, your heart starts seeing things and getting experience. I'm like, oh, this is something I've never experienced, and this is something which I want, and I love this space, I love these people, and I just love this feeling. And yeah, I really appreciate this conversation so much. Thank you so much. This was very eye-opening.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed it.
100%.
Yeah.
Last words for people at home, sitting at home, and who are just like, hey, Chanel, you really inspired me. Thank you so much for this great conversation right now. What advice would you give them? Once again, probably they're just like, yeah, I don't know where to go from here. I don't have maybe a law degree, whatever, but I want to jump into compliance as well. What advice would you give to somebody who's just watching, but inspired on your journey as well?
Yeah. I would say start with where you are and start with what you have. I mean, you wouldn't have this dream or this yearning for no reason. It was placed there. And start with where you are and start with what you have.